First, I wanted to thank you for being all there in Mood at Mobilization. If, like me, you think that Android is awesome and reptilians suck, then you're totally at the right place today. Oh, and before we start, please pardon my French, I mean accent. My English accent is still in developer preview. I know it's been years, but sorry about that. So Android is awesome, and especially as a developer, because I mean, we have so many great tools, like we have an awesome IDE support, excellent build system, we have great libraries, great language, and it's a real pleasure to have that level of quality when developing applications daily. It really improves our application. It makes our application much, much better in less time. And another cool thing with Android is that the code we write can run on so many different hardwares. Android is like everywhere. The Android apps we write can run on phones and tablets, watches, TVs, cars. And now, with Android Thing, we can target a new category of devices, our own homemade devices. And that's huge. Because now in 2017, if you can build an app, you can build a device. You can make crazy devices, such as your own 8-bit distributed piano to play Sia's Titanium song, or whatever you like. If you prefer to play music like a scientist, buy yourself some beer cans, a capacitive touch sensors, and write an Android app that can detect touch events, so you can start playing electronic music. If you're into cute stuff, you can build a lucky cat that moves its paw every time you receive a notification on your phone. Here, I'm using Bluetooth Low Energy to communicate, but you can really use whatever you like. What works with Android will work with Android things. And last example, if you like chocolates, you can create a robot powered by the Google Assistant that tells you some jokes and gives you some sweets. Give me a chocolate bar.
Here you are.
What's interesting here is that you don't need a 3D printer to get started prototyping stuff. Here, I use a shoebox. So cardboard is really great for prototyping. And keep that in mind. You don't have to buy a lot of things, buy a 3D printer. Just take a shoebox or cardboard. It will be very good. Oh, if you're not familiar with the Google Assistant, it's the technology inside the Google Home device that provides a conversational interface to Google, between you and Google. And you can embed that exact same technology in any of your Android or Android Things projects. Not only that, but you can also extend it to your custom needs. In my case, I wanted to extend the Google Assistant, so when I'm hungry and I ask for chocolates, it can give me some. So you can really extend it to your custom needs. That's cool. All those projects were made with Android Things in less than a day each. It's what you have to know. It's like you can really create fun stuff like really, really, really quickly. Oh, and you may wonder something like, okay, but why using Android Things? Because to be honest, if we exclude the Google Assistant robot, you could do exactly all the same with an Arduino. So just why use Android Thing? So just remember that if you need to build a very simple, limited device, don't use Android Thing. That's overkill. Use an Arduino, it will work well. Unless, of course, your goal is to try Android Things. If your goal is to try Android Things, do any kind of project, even small ones with Android Things, and that will be cool. But really, don't use Android Things for very small, simple, stupid devices. Android Things is not targeting those devices, but instead, it's a really, really good platform for devices that require a good amount of computation power, such as security cameras or smart doorbells, for instance. If you want to embed some artificial intelligence inside your IoT devices, or if you want to do some image processing locally without having to consistently ask for a cloud machine to process stuff and then receive answers and then process stuff, receive answers, if you want some computation power locally in an IoT device, Android Things is perfect use case for that. Don't forget, and I may repeat that often today, Android Things is Android. You can create, if you want, a smart device using Kotlin, ArcJava, the architecture components. You can test your IoT project with JUnit and Mockito. Android Things is Android, it's same SDK. And of course, you can use all Google services. So let's say that you need pushes. What you would do if you want some pushes in an Android device, you would just integrate Firebase Cloud Messaging, and then 10 minutes after, you will be able to receive pushes. So if you are your own device and you want pushes, just do the same. Firebase Cloud Messaging, 10 minutes after, you're done. If you need a secure platform, Android Things is a perfect choice for secured IoT device because it's always up to date and it's always secure. You only focus as a developer on writing the application part, and Google is in charge of taking that application and embedding it inside an operating system, and Google will deliver security updates, firmware security updates to your customer devices. So it's not you who will provide security updates, it's Google itself. And that's really good because, for instance, let's imagine that you bought your own Android Things device and the manufacturer says like, okay, it costs me money to maintain it, I will not maintain it anymore. It will not be a problem for you as a user. You will have bought your Android Things device, but you will know that it will always be up to date because it's not the manufacturer that will deliver updates, it's Google itself. So, you know, that's really great because security is one of the biggest issues with IoT right now, and it's not really one with Android Things. Finally, not only Android Things is great for prototyping stuff quickly, but it's not only made for that, it's also designed to help you build professional mass market products. Here's a list of compatible boards so far on which you can install Android Things the same way you would install a GNU over Linux distro. If you're a maker, you just want to prototype something quickly, you should definitively go for the Raspberry Pi 3 because first it's affordable, and then it has a huge community behind it. So if you just want to have fun, buy yourself a Raspberry Pi 3 and start playing with Android Things. If your goal is to build for mass market, like to deliver products to thousands, millions of customers, you may want to start with NXP boards, and because they are really good for mass market because they contain something called a system on module that will simplify a lot of things. On the left, you can see a Raspberry Pi 3, and on the right, NXP Pico. So when you look from very far away, you may think like, come on, those looks really identical. But if you look closely at the NXP board, you will see that it's actually composed of two boards stacked on top of each other. The top smaller board is a core compute module we refer to as a SOM, or system on module. So you can see the top smaller board, it's the system on module. It's a little chip that contains everything inside. So it contains an operating system, CPU, Wi-Fi, storage, everything. Your application and the operating system will be in that small chip. And the base board that is underneath is just an extension if you want to prototype things quickly, so to help you build connect components. So why it's great? It's great for mass market because you only need to buy that small little chip, that small little system on module, and you can create your own custom board underneath that will only include the components you need. Here's an example of what you can do. Google engineers wanted to create a smart candle with 2 LEDs and USB for power. But instead of using that large baseboard on the left, they just took the system on module, created their own custom board, you can see in purple, and just with only the components they need, 2 LEDs and USB, and they just plugged the system on module inside. So that's really cool because first, the board is smaller to produce. It's easy to produce, it's easy to build, and all the complexity, the software and hardware part is located in the SOM. So if you want to build something quickly, just buy system on modules, install Android Things there, build your own custom board that will be really easy, and ship to your customers. Another advantage of using a system on module is that they are already pre-certified for regulator approval. What this means basically is that, you know, when you want to ship a product, before the product enters the market, it needs to pass some certifications, like if it's compatible for Wi-Fi and everything. And those certifications takes time and money. And a good thing with Android Things compatible SOMs is they're already pre-certified. So you will not go through this testing part again, and it will save you a lot of time and money. You will just buy some boards, some system on modules, and you know they're already pre-certified, so it will be cool for you. So now, you really understand why Android Things is a perfect platform for prototyping, but also for production. Android Things is great, I think we all agree on that. But you know, there is another reason why I'm here today. It's to tell you about our world as human beings, and also to tell you about what's wrong with our society. As you know, humans don't use their brain to its full capacity. We are always distracted by media, entertainment, and politics. Also, borders, country lines lead to endless wars and conflicts. The reason for that? It does not work because I think somebody is behind that, and it's a conspiracy probably. So why somebody does not want us to have a really cool demo? I have no idea. So what is the reason, seriously? The reptilians, of course, and the bug was not really intended. My computer really crashed at that time. So if you have never heard of reptilians, those are aliens who are living on our planet since like thousands of years. And it's crazy, and they're controlling us, those lizard people, they're still living among us. And it's crazy because, you know, reptilians have altered our DNA, so we can't use our brain to its full capacity, making us easier to control. They control humans by distracting us with media, entertainment, and politics. They created the laws to restrict us, and they have, through the generations, ruled the world. And you can't tell it because, you know, reptilians are shape-shifting. It means they take the appearance of humans like us, so maybe somebody here is a reptilian, but you can't tell it. And until now, we could not do anything against them. We were totally harmless, and they were laughing at us. But now that Android thing is released, it's a different story. Here's how you can build a machine that detects and exterminates those lizard people. As you may know, humans are unable to detect reptilians because they are shape-shifting. But artificial intelligence can, of course. So we're just going to use TensorFlow, which is an open source library for machine learning created by Google and currently used in many of their products like Search, Gmail, YouTube, Photos, and many more. If you haven't tried it yet, I really suggest you to follow those 3 code labs, especially the TensorFlow for Poet Code Labs. They give you a really great introduction and understanding of what TensorFlow is and what TensorFlow can do. Today, we will use TensorFlow and we will use an existing neural network model that can be used with TensorFlow. So we will use an existing neural network model that was trained for a really, really long time with like thousands of images. No, with 1 million of images. And it was trained to recognize fruits, objects, animals inside the pictures. So Google, they trained an artificial intelligence to recognize stuff inside the picture. But come on, us, we don't need to recognize fruits inside the picture. That's completely useless. What we need is to know if the person inside the picture is a reptilian or if it's a human. That's what we really need to know. And so for that, what we are going to do is we are going to gather a lot of images. So I downloaded many pictures of humans, reptiles, reptilians, and I placed each of those in 3 different folders. So you need a lot of pictures. Then we can just launch a script from the TensorFlow Git repository. This script actually downloads the Inception model trained by Google, and it will just retrain it so that instead of recognizing fruits, animals, it will recognize what the data we provided. So it will keep the knowledge, but it will just transfer the learning with this simple script. So we provide some images, and now we will have a neural network model able to classify humans, reptiles, and reptilians. Once completed, the script generates 2 files, a protobuf retrained graph that is our neural network model, a big file, and it will also generate a labels text file that actually maps TensorFlow result to human readable results. So actually, if we, those labels are actually the names of our folders. So these files contain 3 strings, human, reptile, reptilian. TensorFlow will do something called the inference. It will infer what's inside the picture, and it will return either human, reptile, reptilian. Cool. We also need to optimize our graph for mobile, because, you know, so for that we will just launch a script named optimize for inference. Yeah, you know, retraining a model, a neural network model, it takes a lot of time. It needs a lot of computation power, and it's usually something you do, training an artificial intelligence. You usually do that in a desktop computer or in a clone machine. But it makes no sense to retrain completely an AI on a mobile. What you want to do on a mobile is just use TensorFlow to infer what's on that picture, to determine if it's a human, reptile, reptilian. But you don't want to retrain the neural network model inside a mobile. So basically, we need to optimize the neural network model just to make it much, much lighter. We're moving all operation specific to training and just keeping operation specific to inference. So basically, it will make the model smaller, keeping only what's interesting for us. Okay, So our model is retrained, and now we need to test it to make sure if it works or not, if it can really distinguish humans, reptiles, reptilians. And for that, we will use the official TensorFlow classify sample that's available on GitHub. We will just clone it and just replace their neural network model, providing our own one instead. If you're curious, here is what the sample lab actually does. First, it creates a TensorFlow inference interface with our neural network model and the generated labels. Then the doRecognize method is called every time a picture is taken from the camera. So every time you take a picture, the doRecognize method is called. First, it will convert the picture into an array of pixels because TensorFlow was trained with this data format, and we need to provide him the same data so he can understand stuff. So we just convert it. And then we feed TensorFlow with those data. We run the inference from a certain layer to a certain output node. And finally, we receive an array of confidence per category. So TensorFlow will fill up outputs array, telling us what's on the picture. For instance, if we provide TensorFlow this image, TensorFlow will tell us that according to him, this man is like 1% reptilian, 0% reptile, and 99% human. Okay, so we are confident this man is a real human, that's cool. Now we will test the neural network model with a bunch of random pictures that I found on the internet. So first, this same random guy, a lizard, a reptilian, another random guy, and Obama photoshopped as a reptilian. Don't ask me why I found that on the internet. So let's try the sample app with our new retrained model. So first, this man you can see on the top in blue, it will be TensorFlow tells us, okay, this man is like 99% human, that's cool. This is obviously reptile. It takes a little time to compute and to infer. So it's 97% of chances a reptile, that's cool. This is obviously a reptilian, 99% of chances, 98. This is actually funny because I don't know this man, but TensorFlow tells us that 99% of chances this man is a reptilian. So if you see this man, run away, seriously, be careful. Obama photoshopped as a reptilian is obviously a reptilian because it's photoshopped. And oh, what's that? Oh, TensorFlow tells us this man is of course Jake Wharton. And funny thing here, TensorFlow recognized Jake Wharton as 50% reptilian, 50% Jake Wharton. You know what this means? We didn't want to face that truth, but it turns out Jake Wharton is actually a crossbreed reptilian, according to TensorFlow, not according to me. And that could explain a lot of things, like why he's so much smarter than us? Because he actually can use his brain to its full capacity. Unlike us, you know, that's why he's so much smarter. Because and funny thing, it's not related to Android things, but crossbreed reptilians, they don't know they are reptilians themselves because they are not fully reptilian. So maybe he doesn't know, and maybe that could explain like a lot of things. And that's so obvious, and the truth was right in front of us all along. That's crazy, but let's forget this for a while. Yeah, we have tested our TensorFlow neural network model, and it works like really, really well. Like it tells us some truths we didn't want to hear, to know. Oh, and by the way, if you wonder how TensorFlow could recognize Jake Wharton, it's because I didn't tell you the whole truth. I didn't create 3 different folders, human, reptile, reptilians, but I created 4 different folders, human, reptile, reptilians, and 1 with pictures of Jake Wharton. That's how TensorFlow could recognize Jake Wharton. And you can see how well TensorFlow can recognize faces once you provide enough data. Okay, so our neural network model is okay. Now we will create an Android Things project, and we will integrate that model, all that TensorFlow inside an Android Things project. To create an Android Things project, it's easy. You can just start Eclipse, click on File, New, Java project. No, I'm joking. Don't exit the room, don't run away. We have no chances against reptilians if we use Eclipse. No. Let's start Android Studio 3, of course, and create a new project. What's cool with Android Studio 3 is that you can directly create an Android Things project. As you can see, Android Things already run on Oreo because it's always up to date. Now let's take a look at the generated files. So what IntelliJ generated us. First, Android Studio generated an Android manifest file. As you can see, it's really similar to what you already know. An Android Things project needs an applications, activities, and you know, for the Android Things launcher to guess which activity it should start when booting your device, you just have to provide a small intent filter named IoT launcher. So when an activity has this IoT launcher intent filter, the IoT boot will recognize that it should start this activity. You also need to use a library to tell that it's an Android Things project, but actually This is just for your information. When you create a project with Android Studio, everything is already generated. So it's just boilerplate, but it's still good to know. Android Studio also generated a very, very simple main activity, similar to any other Android activities. And notice here the set content view call. You can manipulate layouts with Android Things, but you can also not to. It's completely up to you whether your Android Things device has a screen or not. If you're building a paper-like robot, you will need a screen because your users need to interact in a visual way. And if you need a screen, you will just inflate, set content view, and inflate your layouts the same way, and just find view by IDs to get reference of your views. It will be the same. You just connect a screen to your Android Things board, an official screen or a compatible one, and it will work out of the box. Here's an example. I just created a small frame layout with one background and one picture of a reptilian. And if you connect your screen to your Android Things board, it will work out of the box with a set content view. And notice here, I also added a rotate animation to the background, just to tell you that you can do it with Android Things, of course. It's the same API, because it's Android. Okay, so nothing difficult here. You can use XML layouts if you want, but you can also not to. Like if you're building a Roomba-like robot, you will not need a screen because Command Over does not need a screen at all. But you will still need an activity because it's Android and the launcher needs to know which activity to start. So you need an entry point to your application. So you will still need to create activities, but you may not need a visual user interface. It's not because you don't have any visual user interface that you will not have any interface at all. For instance, you can consider implementing a text-to-speech to provide a vocal user interface to your users instead. And of course, if you want to integrate text-to-speech, use the same APIs you're already familiar with Android. It's the same SDK, same APIs. And finally, Android Studio generated a small Gradle file, and you can see there is a new import. It's like an Android Things support library. And this library actually lets you interact and communicate with external peripherals, like all this kind of stuff. Oh, and by the way, you don't need an electronic background to get started with Android Things. If you're like completely new to electronic, which is my case, I suggest you to buy an Arduino starter kit because usually those kits comes with a lot of different peripherals you can start playing with. And you will also have a PDF, code samples, and instruction so you can learn very quickly about electronics just buying that. And once you're familiar with those components, once you played with those components with an Arduino, just take the same components and plug those directly to your Android Things board and just continue playing with those with Android Things. And if you don't know how to connect a component to an Android Things board, you will find answers on the internet that will tell you how to connect it. That's really simple. So how can we communicate with those peripherals? The Android Things library, the support library for Android Things, uses industry standard protocols such as GPIO, PWM, I2C, and others. If you've never heard of that, don't be scared. First, I was thinking, come on, that looks so complicated, like only letters like that. Actually, it's not complicated at all. Those are just ways to communicate with external peripherals. And when you buy a device, it's usually specified which interface it uses. For instance, if you want to buy this LCD screen, it will tell you that you need to connect it to the I2C pins of your board. So it will be clear for you. But we will just start simply, and currently we just want to blink an LED. So first we connect an LED to our board. An LED is a GPIO device, so you connect it to the GPIO pins of your board, like all those ones. I decided to connect my LED to the one named BCM4. So each pin has a name, and I will connect my LED to the BCM4 pin. And if I want to use it, I will simply use the Peripheral Manager service from the Android Things library. And this class gives us reference to our devices for a given pin name. So here, in that case, our LED is a GPIO device connected to BCM4. So I just PIO service.open GPIO. So I open my GPIO connected to BCM4, and I will directly have a reference to my LED. So it's like 2 lines of code if you want to have a reference to your device once you've connected it to your board. And then to turn it on, we simply set its value to true. And now the LED will be always on. So if you basically know what a Boolean is, I'm sure you can know how to blink LEDs. And be ready to turn it off. You need to set the value to false. Okay, that's cool. So if you want to make to blink an LED, it's not even 5 lines of code. And of course, you can use prettier LEDs if you want. Like, it's not because you're a newbie that you should use ugly things. You can use prettier stuff, of course. Back to our LCD screen. Remember the I2C device. So instead of opening a GPIO device, we will open an I2C device. That's cool. And to display some text on this LCD screen, we simply need to call the write method of the I2C device reference. So if you want to write data to an LCD screen, means displaying some stuff, you need to write data in a byte array inside the device. That's really, really easy. And as you've seen so far, I didn't use any C, C++ code. You can use GNI if you want, but you can also not too. Once again, here I just use Java or Kotlin to write things to interact with my components with Android things. So I use high-level language, which means that if you want to create a driver to simplify using a component, for instance, if you have an LCD screen and you want to create a library that makes the text scrolls automatically, then you just need to create a standard Android library. That's normal. That's very, very simple, and you already know how to create libraries. That's the same way. Drivers are already available for all the components you see here. So if you want to try a component, you have a lot of drivers for Android things already available for all those components and many more. If there are no drivers for a given component, just find the specification of your component and write it by yourself with Java code or Kotlin code, or just find the Arduino implementation, because usually drivers have already Arduino, components have already Arduino driver. Just find the Arduino driver and port the source code easily. It's not something which is difficult, but it's something that may take you some time. So if you want to create a driver, it may take you like 4 hours the first time you will do it, because you will be not familiar to it. But it's easy. It just takes some time. So for instance, if you want to use this I2C screen for your IoT project, you connect it to the I2C pins of your board, and once again, the internet can tell you how to. You import the existing driver made by Google or made by the community. Just an import, a Gradle import, that's cool. And you can start using it and turn on pixels. So here I set the pixel X and Y, so pixel 00 to true. So, and I will turn on the one pixel of my I2C screen. And this driver also has a nice helper method, so you can directly provide an Android bitmap to your device. So you have some the driver here implemented some method to simplify stuff, and in just 2 or 3 lines of code, I can just set a bitmap data to my device in one function call. And 4 lines of code later, you're done. You have what you want. Like I displayed a bitmap in this small screen. And it's really funny because when you are an Android developer, you are not used to manipulate components. Actually, you can use any kind of components, and you can interact with those the same way you interact with your screen with Android or with other stuff in your applications. Okay, now back to our generated Android Studio project. We generated an Android Studio project, and we already created a TensorFlow model to detect if the person is or not a reptilian. What we can do is we can just take the code from our mobile project and copy-paste and import it directly to our Android Things project, because remember, Android Things is Android, so you can just copy-paste. If you want to do it faster, you can just clone this repository. It's an official sample that includes Android Things plus TensorFlow. So you just clone that, and you replace the current neural network model with your own one, and you're just done. It's basically the same. To take pictures, because our machine needs to take picture to provide data to TensorFlow so you can detect whether it's a reptilian or not, you will just connect a camera, a compatible camera, and once you connect it to your Android Things board, you use the same camera APIs you're already familiar with Android. If you're not into detecting lizard people, that's cool. I'm not judging you. Here is another good example of why it's interesting to embed artificial intelligence inside an IoT device. This device is actually used in a farm to sort cucumbers by size, shape, colors, and other attributes. So it's created by a farmer, and he wanted to sort stuff, and he decided to create a machine with TensorFlow to sort stuff. And you can even consider something like if you are in a factory and you can create a device that takes pictures of productive devices, and every time TensorFlow detects like this device is probably broken, like 60% of chances it's broken, your Android Things project can directly stop the production line. So it will be easier for you to understand the issue, fail fast. So you can really stop the production line with TensorFlow when TensorFlow detects some issues. Ideally, we want to take a picture when someone is approaching our device. For that, we will use a ultrasonic sensor. This sensor uses a sonar like bats or dolphins do. So it is actually composed of two GPIOs. So remember, the LEDs, two GPIOs are like two booleans. There is a trigger boolean and an echo boolean. So when you set the trigger value to true, it will start emitting a sound wave. And then when the reflected wave comes back, the echo, the second boolean, will be set from false to true. And depending on how long it took to trigger the wave and how long the value was set to true, with a small mathematics formula, you can determine the distance to an object. So we will use this very cool component that uses a sonar to detect distance to somebody. And when a human is very close to our machine, we will take a picture and detect whether or not it's a reptilian. So what we are going to do is use a driver for that component. Oh, actually, there are no drivers for that component yet. So what can we do? Yeah, I know. I'm actually simplifying stuff because to make it clear, this component requires. I will tell it probably later. So let's consider there are no drivers for that component. Like we want to use something, a component, and there is nothing. So and we have like 15 minutes and the talk is over. So we have no time to create an Android Things driver yet. What can we do? So we will go to option number 2, which is using an Arduino as a proxy. So you just connect your component to an Arduino, and you use the Arduino driver. So I just connect my component to the Arduino, and I connect my Arduino to the USB port of my Android Things device. And in your Android Things project, you can read data from the USB port directly. And here, I showed you that just to tell you that you can use architecture components if you want. Here, I created a simple live data wrapper on top of the Arduino proxy. So what I do is every time I receive data from the serial, when the Arduino is emitting, this is the Arduino sketch. So when the Arduino receives a distance, it writes it to the serial. And when I receive data to my serial port, what I will do is I will simply emit it from my live data. I will set value to the distance in my live data. And I can just observe this live data in my activity. And I will receive stuff. So you can see it's very, if you are too lazy to create a driver, or if you have no time, or if, like for this component is actually tricky because it needs a really, really fast operating system, like a real-time operating system. And Android is not real-time. And this component needs to send electric pulse very, very, very quickly, and Android Things is not capable of that. So if you have that kind of issues, what you can do is just use an Arduino as a proxy, a microcontroller, and just create your live data wrapper on top of it, and it will be done like, if you're used to it, 15 minutes later you can do that. So any components, if you don't have any drivers, you can create, it's still an option to create your own, use an Arduino as a proxy. So let's test it. Here I'm approaching to the device, and I can see the distance is decreasing, so from 20 to 6 centimeters. So okay, now I can detect when somebody is close to my machine. What to do now? When somebody is 25 centimeters close to our machine, we take a picture. And of course, if he's a reptilian, we should obviously kill him. We are not just here for fun. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot. We do not want to kill Jake Wharton. I mean, even if he's not like us, come on. He helped us so much, we just can't do that. So just add this small fix, but okay. So now our device can detect when somebody is close to the machine and call the exterminate method. But what will the exterminate method do? So it's done, detection is done. To exterminate reptilians, I found 3 possible ways. Option 1, using a gun. So first you will need to buy a servo motor. A servo motor is a PWM device that can move its needle from 0 to 180 degrees. So you know a LED is true, false, Boolean, and a servo motor is like a value in a given range from 0 to 180 degrees. So you connect it to the PWM pins of your board. You will see connecting devices, it's easy. It's like Lego once you're familiar to it. Then you import the official driver. There is one. You initialize it. That's just some boilerplate. So you just said that your PWM device is actually a servo that can move its needle from 0 to 180 degrees. And you move the servo motor to the angle you want. Here, for instance, I move the servo from 0 to 42 degrees to 0 degree. Okay, and to move that angle, you just servo.angle equals the angle you want. One line of code to move a servo motor. Then to exterminate reptilians, you will need a rope and a gun. You attach everything together. When a reptilian is detected, you move the angle of the servo motor so it can pull the rope and pull the trigger. Okay, let's try it. We arm the gun. That's cool. One line of code to kill people, like just moving an angle. Let's do it again. No, we have no time, but that's cool. Yeah. Oh, of course, you hide the gun behind the fake wall, otherwise people will see there is a gun and they will maybe, come on, you will have trouble. Okay, but you know what? Option 1 is not a good idea because first you need to find a gun, and I know it's here in mobilization, it's easy to find one, but usually in other places it's not easy to find, and you will have trouble if you have a gun with you. So I decided to use option number 2, which is very, very legal, which is building your own flamethrower. Oh, and sorry for that, but I will not do any live demo today because you know a live demo always fail eventually, and I don't think you will like me a lot if you're on fire and screaming and stuff like that. So no demo today. To build your own flamethrower, once again, you will need your best friend, which is a servo motor. You know that one. You remember servo.set angle equals blah blah. But this one is not powerful enough, so we'll just take a stronger one. And this one is actually just stronger. It's more expensive, it's stronger, but you still use it the same way as the very small one. You will also need some rubber bands, a candle, and a flammable spray. Be careful, you need to buy this with this picture. If you don't see this picture, don't buy that, that will not work. You attach everything together and you try moving the servo. Okay, so it emits some spray. Okay, it works. Now you just add a candle, and when a reptilian is detected, you change the angle programmatically so it can throw inflammable liquid onto the candle. Well, you see, I tried, but my flamethrower was not that impressive. So, yeah. So you can just, other people did it too, and you can just look at that project, for instance. Yeah. But it's basically the same thing. It's just a servo that press and throw inflammable liquid onto a candle. And you can see this device is using a remote control. And to add remote features to your machine, you can use what works with Android already. So if you can just use the Nearby Connections API, Bluetooth Low Energy. You can embed a nano HTTPD server inside your Android project. So it will serve some pages, and every time a page is there is a request on the page, you can move the angle of the servo or whatever you like. So you can really use the same stuff you can use on Android, on your Android Things project to add remote control features or anything. But the flamethrower was not violent enough. So let's exterminate reptilians with option number 3, which is using a chainsaw. First, you will need a relay module. And to understand what electronics modules are, you have to consider those are like libraries. You know, when you use Retrofit or RHJava, it's like a lot of complicated stuff under the hood, but it's accessible via a simple contract. And electronic modules are very similar. It's a lot of complicated stuff, but accessible with a very simple contract. And the contract to do that, so this device is to control high voltage devices. So this component lets you control high voltage devices, like to turn on a chainsaw. Of course, you will not plug your chainsaw directly to your Android Things board because the pins are very small and it will burn the board. But you will connect your chainsaw to the power plugs, and then you will just add this in the middle, and you can use a GPIO, so the Boolean API, to turn on or off a chainsaw. So it's the same API you already know. So if you want to turn on a chainsaw, you will use a relay module, and you will just set the value to true, and the chainsaw will be always on. It's perfect for home automation, coupled with the Google Assistant. If you want to, hey Google, turn on the fan or stuff like that. But come on, we are not here for home automation. We are here to kill reptilians. So we will use this relay module, to turn on and off a chainsaw. Here's the plan, so you can appreciate my game skills. So the chainsaw will be in a fake roof, and when somebody is approaching the picture and it turns out it's a reptilian, the chainsaw will fall down to the reptilian face. Of course, the relay module will start it, and it will be cool. And to build a chainsaw, we will need a component that is a key component. We will use an LED strip. This is really the key component because it's very pretty and it will add some colors over reptilian's blood. It will look great. And here is what it looks like. So you can see the chainsaw has different colors: blue, green, blue, purple, stuff like that. The colors are changing. Why I'm showing you this today, simply to explain you again that you can use the same APIs. To control the color of my chainsaw, I actually used a value animator. I loop from 0 to 300 and 360, and every time I had for 8 seconds, and I had an update listener to my value animator just to get the new value, so the new color, and I just write the new color to my LED strip. So you can see you use the same Android APIs even to control a chainsaw. That's crazy. And to animate the chain, to animate it faster or not, you can just here I decided to use a value animator with a custom path interpolator. But it's just an example to show you that you can use value animators, which is an API to animate views in Android. And that's fun because, you know, with Android Thing, you can really manipulate any Android SDK components. And when value animators were created, like nobody at Google would have guessed somebody would use that API one day to kill people. And that's really, really cool. Value animator can kill people. That's really insane. And I think we are done. Reptilians are completely afraid now. To conclude, Android Thing is fun. If you already know Android, it's so easy to get started. Like you just buy a board and you can already have fun with it. So I strongly encourage you to give it a try. And if you're not familiar enough with Android, we now have a really good IDE. We have a great language, and you can make fun stuff with Android Things. So it may be the perfect time for you to get started with Android if you want to know more. In only a few days with Android Things, you can really start creating nice projects, even with no electronics background. Android Things really accelerate and simplify the development of secured IoT devices. And just try Android Things, really. You will learn new things, you will make useful or fun stuff. You already know how to create an app, no matter the platform is. You know how to create apps, and now you can make devices. That's completely huge. That's all for me. Feel free to follow me on Twitter for fun stuff. Slides are already available online. If you want to check the footnotes, you will find more explanations and code samples if you're interested to know how to kill people. I will be around today. If you have some questions, I will take those. Otherwise, I'm on Twitter and I will be around today, so feel free to ping me if you want to discuss Android Things, IoT, reptilians, whatever you like. And thank you for your attention.
What was the approximate cost of the first version of the Exterminator, all the modules and things you've used there?
So the cost of the first version of the
Exterminator, of the Reptilian Exterminator.
So the gun?
Yeah, the whole thing.
So a Raspberry Pi board is like $35. A servo motor is $1. A rope, take your from your shoes, and that's all. And again, but come on, that's cheap. No.
Thanks for awesome presentation. Always a pleasure to see you presenting. So I want to get back to this production line. When you showed an example that it's super easy to detect if cucumbers are in this particular shape or size. So my question is, how do you feel about, because in the end, all this Android thing is going to replace humans. In this case, like I guess 10 humans are needed on production line to sort cucumbers. How do you feel about that? That your nice tricks and nice technology can, at the end, make humans jobless. How do you think about that?
Next question. Thank you, Alexander. Any question?
Could we launch your application and check are you reptilian?
So I'm not, otherwise I will not tell you how to do that. Or maybe I am, that's why I'm doing that. So later artificial intelligence will replace humans. I don't know. That's cool.
Thank you.